A lot to get to after the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix, and there was a lot of things happening right from the get-go. First lap, they go into it, seems normal. Max has a good start. Lando Norris has a good start. Everybody gets away pretty easily. However, once they get to the second half of the circuit, there's just rain coming down. Not really heavy at first, more medium. Then Perez flies into the pits. Leclerc flies in the pits. A ton of cars, and then one more lap around, and the rain just gets heavier. They go fly around. Every car jumps into the pits, and it switches up a couple things, but not a whole lot of things. Max leading, Sergio Perez leading. There was tons of passing. A very interesting Grand Prix. If you haven't watched this Grand Prix, it throws back to the old Formula One days. Very much a grassy circuit, people up on hills, a lot of just like little rivers and ponds and all over. You're right on the ocean, so there was tons of rain forecasting. But it was more moderate. The people went on to intermediates. Ended up being a normal race. Albon was fighting up there constantly, but it was just, a very interesting first couple laps. It kind of settled in, and from there, we have Logan Sargent, 20th position. I'm going to go from last to first here. Logan Sargent crashes on his own, goes over a curb, completely loses it. This kid was dejected. It was reminiscent, if you don't know this, Mika Hakkinen, 1999 Italian Grand Prix, Monza. He was crying in the grass. This kid opened up his visor and started touching his eyes. He knows all the rumors that have been going on that they're going to sack him, that he's costing them just as much as Mick Schumacher was costing Haas. It's all coming to fruition. I think he knows. He's been in Williams for half of a season, and he's on his way out. There's just too many good drivers out there and drivers who want seats. He's not going to be able to maintain that position, even though there's 3 American Grand Prix going on. Charles Leclerc, 19th. You will not believe this unless you watched it yourself. Liam Lawson, a driver who had a terrible weekend. I mean, you got to be fair with the kid. He's never driven a Formula One car other than testing before, qualified last. He took over Charles Leclerc after Charles Leclerc had horrible technical decisions with the pits and everything. He had an incident with, I believe, Lando Norris where a part of his wing got broke off. It affected downforce. Don't believe the conspiracy. There is a conspiracy going on right now saying that there was something else wrong with the car. They had to retire it. Bullshit. Charles Leclerc is a head case. He does not know what is going on. He has lost total faith in his team. His teammates lost total faith in his team. They don't trust anybody there. They don't trust them to make the right pit stop decision, the strategy decision, anything. It's just always a joke. And he got back there. Liam Lawson ends up passing him. And then Leclerc gets him back on the straight. But this is a guy possibly at the worst team, Alfa Romeo, other than maybe the Haas. AlphaTauri. First drive ever in the back. Not used to this. Was called up literally on Saturday after Ricardo broke his wrist or thumb or whatever. It was I'm going to put it as the most embarrassing Formula One moment of the season. It was terrible. And it was just, it encapsulated everything wrong with Ferrari and Charles Leclerc at the same time. They are going to have a hard time from rebounding that specific moment on television that's going to be living in people's minds and fans for the rest of the season. Okay, Zhou Guanyu 18. Zhou Guanyu, it wouldn't look like it from the result, but he was running really high. He was up in like 5th, 6th position. There was one point where he was in 2nd place for like a handful of laps and staying there. They put him on mediums. They put him on all these different strategies. And it ended up not working out because he crashed when it started raining way later on. I'll get to that later on in this video. But he was having an incredible race. He's a much better driver than Bottas. I don't care if he crashed out. He really showed a lot of talent in this race. He was almost going to be my driver of the day at one point, but unfortunately, no. George Russell, 17th. Okay, George, that's not a good encapsulation of what actually happened. George Russell was said even over the radio, man, we were looking at a podium. I was running up there at the start of the race. Then the rain came. Then we made a bad decision. Then they put him on a hard tire after he was in like 17th position. They thought they could ride it for like 50 laps or something like that, maybe the whole race. And he was moving up, and then the rain hit again. They made a weird decision. Then on the restart later on in the Grand Prix, He'd get clipped. Lando Norris, he'd bring it in. They just put him on some tires, finished 17th. Yuki Tsunoda, again, a guy who was on 40 laps, like a soft for 40 laps. He was up in like 4th, 5th position. They thought maybe they could pit him and come out in a points-paying position. He was constantly near a points-paying position, but the rain at the end, which I'll talk about more, just really became brutal. There was a red flag with 7 laps to go where it just started pouring in the span of a 2-lap time, and everybody went on intermediates, and then right before the red flag was thrown, everyone was about to go on full wets. This, of course, affected Russell, Tsunoda, everybody here. Zhou Guanyu crashed out before that happened because it was raining so heavy. Kevin Magnussen, nothing to write home about. I don't know how he was reinstated for another season with Haas. You could have gone with so many other options, and they'd get just as many points as Kevin Magnussen at this point. Magnussen is a joke, shouldn't be in Formula One. Liam Lawson, that'll be a good drive because he actually kept guys who actually finished the race behind him. 13th position, actually beat his teammate, which is actually spelling bad news for Yuki Tsunoda. But you could say Yuki Tsunoda was doing much better than him for the entire race, but this weird a confluence of events really hampered that happening. Okay, 12th, Nico Hulkenberg. Not much from the Haas's the entire race. They were just in the back. Lance Stroll literally was in 20th place most of the race. All this raining stuff just allowed him to move up. He has a bit as big of a gap to his teammate as Logan Sargent has to Alex Albon. I think it's you could say his is worse because they barely score points at Williams, but the amount of points you can score at Aston Martin is just so much higher than what he's been doing. So 11th place, not even a point-paying position. 10th, Ocon. Ocon's really been off lately. The team's changing around him, and I thought it got better considering the results that I'm about to get to, but Ocon fighting around 10th. You used to think that was impressive when the car wasn't too good and he didn't have as a good of teammate either. But Ocon, I'm not saying Alonso was that teammate, but when he's had worse teammates than him, he's always looked great. But Ocon ended up being a mid-tier journeyman driver at this point. Piastri 9th. The McLarens were so much faster than this. All the strategies, all the rain, it really affected them. I don't know if their cars can perform in the rain like other cars right now. Okay, Alex Albon 8th. That might have been the driver of the day. He was in 6th for a lot of it. The rain and all the weird strategy that went on, like I told you, it poured at the start, it poured at the end. It fucked up a lot of people's races who were doing really well. I'd almost give him driver of the day. Lando Norris 7th. Again, the McLarens made some bad decisions when it first started raining. They pitted too late. So Lando Norris was only able to get to 7th, but if this was a complete dry race, I imagine he would have been on the podium. Lewis Hamilton 6th. Lewis Hamilton, and this was weird, but for the whole race, pretty much up until the end, even with the rain at the start, I really thought that it was weird because Lewis Hamilton, with all his career victories, with all the help he's had by having the best car ever, there was this weird period of time for like 80% of the race where he had qualified terribly in 13th. He had never moved up the entire time. And he really just got lucky that this came. But without that, it's weird to say that Lewis Hamilton is a non-factor. This whole season, even last season when the car was sucking for 1 or 2 races, people were constantly watching him. Can he get up there? Will he be able to fight back? And they were able to fight for podiums and 4ths and 5ths, and he would be around that area. He was a non-factor up until the last 20% of the race where he started cutting through people. But that's just because I think he's very good weather driver. I think he knows how to handle the car going up against people. And this is a better position than I think he actually was as a driver when it comes to a dry race today. I think he would have been in 10th place if it was dry race today. He was able to cut through people because of his skills and experience in driving in the rain for all those years. Carlos Sainz, he's doing the Carlos Sainz. I'm making up a new dance move. Carlos Sainz is always doing the Carlos Sainz. You know what the Carlos Sainz is? The Carlos Sainz is I find a position that's respectable. It doesn't embarrass me. I don't crash out. I don't end up in 10th or 11th. I find a 5th and I sit there. I never attack. I defend when someone comes near me, but then eventually they get past me because I can't defend that hard. Carlos Sainz does this. If he gets to a 3rd, he ain't going for 2nd. He ain't going for 1st. He holds place. At least when Leclerc gets up to these points, he's trying to win the race or get a podium or fight someone. Carlos Sainz is just content to get a position that he feels is respectable, that people at Ferrari won't shit on him for, and he'll end up probably beating Leclerc in the championship just because he does this. And Leclerc is a basket case where it's either I'm on podium or I'm nothing. And then Leclerc just has a fucking terrible race and can't do anything. Carlos Sainz is the most boring, predictable bullshit driver on the grid. Logan Sargent might suck, but at least he's not just going to go for nothing his entire life, which is what's happening with Carlos Sainz. Fourth, Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez was in second pretty much the entirety of this race. He made a bad move. When it started pouring with 7 laps to go, or 9 laps to go, I guess, he spun out, didn't go on the gravel, but went on that cement. He actually did a great move because he knew he was going into the wall, but he turned into the spin, so only the back would barely touch, and he could use the momentum of the spin to start driving again where the car wouldn't completely stop. The only problem after that is he went into the pits. Bad decision. He went back into like 6th place. When they restarted it, he got a penalty for speeding in pit lane. That added 5 seconds. If it wasn't for that, he would have gotten 3rd place. But Sergio Perez, for a guy that Helmut Marko's been trying to push, saying, hey, I don't know about 2024, I think that's trying to give him some fire up his ass to do something. But I think Sergio Perez, as long as he stays second in the championship, there's no reason to fix this at this point. Max is winning so many races that it almost doesn't matter that Sergio's not winning the races. He was proving himself to be a number 2 driver this entire race, so take it with a grain of salt that he's in 4th. It wasn't reflective of his actual achievements, I thought. But again, he's not helping himself by not qualifying well where he has to cut through people. And every time they were doing restarts, Max would get away from him immediately. It's like he's settling into his Rubens Barrichello role. Pierre Gasly. I would argue he probably should have driver of the day. 3rd position. That Alpine has been so shitty all season. The team essentially reinvented itself, got rid of Ottman Safnauer and a lot of other executive position people. It seems like it was the right move. Pierre Gasly did great in Belgium and now doing great here. He's becoming the number 1 driver over Ocon, in my opinion. This is a podium now. And he's been outclassing him ever since everything changed there. Maybe Ocon was more suited to the people that were already there. He knew them. But will Gasly become the number 1 driver there? I don't know about Gasly, though. He's a basket case, too. Like, this could happen, and then he could fall off for a bunch of races. So we'll have to see. But I've never been big on him, but I have to give him his credit. He's had 2 incredibly great drives back-to-back, and he's making a statement to be the number 1 driver at Alpine. Second, Fernando Alonso. It's either he's back or the car's back, or it's a mixture of both. That car sucked for 4 races in a row. It wasn't Fernando. The car just didn't have it together. Lance Stroll has to be kicked out of that team because I don't think Fernando Alonso needs motivation. He's one of those guys who's actually a self-motivator. He doesn't need a teammate. But it can't hurt to have a teammate who's like at least near your skill level racing you hard. Second position, completely earned, deserves it. There was this small amount of time in the race with like a couple laps to go when they restarted after the red flag where he was getting near Max. He was getting 7, 8 tenths, and they didn't have DRS at the time. And as soon as those 2 laps were over, Max just got it a little bit over a second. And then after that, since he wasn't able to use the DRS, Max was able to just get away from him. But there was like this small period of time where you genuinely thought that like Max is a great, complete driver, but I just think Fernando, with all his experience driving in Formula One, driving in the rain so much, that he really was staying closer to them. I think if it was Perez, he would have completely been left by Verstappen immediately. Even though he was going super fast, I just think there's some sort of mentality or teamwork going on there where Perez is just not going to challenge him for it. But there was a small glimmer of hope where I'm like, maybe the consecutive victory is going to end. Maybe we're going to see Fernando Alonso pass him. And once he passes him, he'll throw every block and move to not allow Verstappen to pass him on the straight again. I thought it could have been thrilling, but it wasn't. I really wish it was. And, of course, Max Verstappen wins the race. That's what we expected. It was great. His whole family was there. I didn't see Yas on camera. That was the only thing I was wondering. He's now at 9 victories. The team's at 13 consecutive victories. But I read a statistic that if George Russell hadn't won in Brazil, that they would be at like 28, maybe 30 consecutive victories, something crazy like that. But that's my report on this race. Hopefully in Monza we'll see a challenge. That's a very fast track. Fernando Alonso, very familiar there. Can we see Aston Martin challenge the Red Bull with this momentum behind them? Alonso was going crazy on the podium. You could see the energy in this old guy. I think if anyone wins a race that's not in a Red Bull, it'll be specifically Fernando Alonso or one of the McLarens. I wouldn't say a specific driver at McLaren or one of the McLarens. But I think Alonso, I'm telling you, said at the start of the season, I think this guy can win a race. He just needs, and I hope he could just win it on pace if he could just challenge Max later on in a race or something. Because it's hard to challenge Max over the entirety of a race because of how fast the Red Bull is and how synced up he is with the Red Bull. But I just want him to be able to challenge him just on pure pace and win a race, man. That would be awesome for Alonso. It would be awesome for everybody watching. So let me know what you thought of the race. You think who's the failures, who's the victors here, and any other, because there were a lot of weird, small, minute things that I went over this extensively, but there are all probably small things that I didn't mention. If I did mention them, let me know down there and I'll respond. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.